Astrology isn't just about signs and symbols. It's a tool for navigating real life. Hello, and welcome to Astrology with Elisa. I'm your host, Elisa Dixon, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Okay, everyone, we are officially in full swing of eclipse season. The full moon lunar eclipse is 10 days away on Sunday, September 7th, and the energy is big and building, especially if it's hitting a personal planet or point in your chart. And I know we just talked about eclipses on Sunday on my YouTube channel in the Astro Bestie chat, and you may have already caught the replay I dropped here on Monday. But even so, I realized I had a few more thoughts I really wanted to share about eclipses. When I first started learning about astrology, and eclipse energy in particular, I was trying to make sense of what it all meant, especially because it always seemed so ominous. I'll never forget one of the first astrology readings I had. In the midst of talking about a serious topic, the astrologer made this little side comment, "Oh yes, and there's an eclipse soon. At the time, I was worried about my aging grandmother, so I immediately thought she meant this eclipse was a sign my grandmother might die. And it shook me. She encouraged me, go visit your grandmother. So I did. And it was a really sweet visit. My grandmother was right around 90, with early onset dementia, but in generally good health, still going to activities at her local senior center. So we spent a weekend together that I expected might be our last, all because of that comment about an eclipse. And here's the thing. It wasn't our last visit. She's still alive today, years later. In fact, I'm going to see her next weekend in Connecticut for the first of several wedding events for my brother. His fiance's bridal shower is that weekend, and I'll get to be with family and spend some time with my grandmother. But that experience, that first conversation about an eclipse years ago, really stuck with me. Because yes, sometimes people do pass on eclipses, but a lot of times they don't. And living through eclipse season after eclipse season, watching my grandmother still here, showed me something important. Eclipses aren't always about endings of life. They're about transitions. Sometimes they close a chapter. Sometimes they open a door. Sometimes both. But either way, they move the story forward. And you know, it's funny. At first, I didn't even want to cover eclipses on our Astro Bestie chat on YouTube. When we all got together to record and we started planning what we each were going to share about eclipses, I actually bailed on the whole thing. I was like, I don't think I want to do this topic after all. Because those chats are usually light and fun. We're laughing, we're telling stories, and I didn't want to bring in something that felt heavy, which was probably my Mercury in Pisces showing up on the low vibe side, leaning into avoidance, because that happens sometimes with me. But then I thought, how could I, as an astrologer, not talk about eclipses with you all? Eclipses are a pretty big deal in astrology. So I took a few days, and eventually we did get together and record the chat. And wouldn't you know it, here I am still talking about eclipses. Because the truth is, this eclipse energy is layered, and I'm not quite finished unpacking it. And what really strikes me this time is that this upcoming lunar eclipse on September 7th is happening exactly on my natal Mercury. That's significant, to me at least. When an eclipse hits a personal planet, it doesn't just skim past. It speaks directly to that part of you. For me, that means my Mercury, which is in charge of my mind, my words, my communication, my thinking, the way I process and share information. So of course this one is landing loud and clear, and here I am still talking about it. So let's satisfy my Mercury and talk about what eclipses really are. Astrologically, they're moments of intensity, when the sun, the moon, and the earth line up in such a way that the normal flow of light gets interrupted. And symbolically and energetically, that interruption matters. A lunar eclipse happens at a full moon. This is the one we're rolling into first. This one's about culmination and completion, a story reaching its peak. Think about it like a wave building and building in the ocean. You feel it rising for days or for weeks beforehand. By the time it finally crashes onto the shore, the eclipse has already happened. And then, just like a wave washing back out, the emotional intensity passes. That's why lunar eclipses feel so heavy in the lead up. But often, by the time the eclipse moment arrives, you're already wrung out. The release has happened. A solar eclipse happens at a new moon. It's like a supercharged reset button. The sun, our vitality and life direction, gets temporarily obscured, and it points to new beginnings that often feel like fate or destiny. But unlike lunar eclipses, you don't feel solar eclipses as strongly in the buildup. Solar eclipses are more like if you were to crack an egg. The eclipse itself is the crack, and it can be sudden and surprising, or it can seem quiet and subdued. But the energy drips out slowly afterwards, and it often takes 3 to 6 months before you really see the new shape forming. So that's the rhythm. And lunar eclipses are felt more internally with the emotion building. Solar eclipses are seen more outwardly in the world after the fact. But it's that intensity of the energy that makes eclipses feel so different from regular new or full moons. The energy is amplified, it's karmic, and it sticks around. So here's how you can work with this energy yourself. First, look at your birth chart. Find where 15 degrees of Pisces lands in your chart, because that's where this September 7th lunar eclipse is happening. Whatever house that degree falls into, that's the area of your life where something may be building to a peak, ready to be released, completed, or transformed. For example, my Mercury is within a degree of this eclipse, and it's in my 3rd house of communication, short trips, and siblings. Pretty interesting that I'm taking a short trip to celebrate my brother and his fiancée at her bridal shower, literally the day before the eclipse. And the last few months have had me seriously focusing on communication through this podcast and my new YouTube show. Sure, some of this might have unfolded anyway, but not as quickly. Eclipses accelerate things, and they add pressure. I can attest to that for sure. But even if you don't know your exact chart, you can still tune in to what's showing up for you. Ask yourself, what feels like it's been building emotionally the past couple of weeks? Where am I reaching a breaking point or a turning point? What am I ready to release, even if it's uncomfortable? That's the eclipse at work. It's about noticing the story that's unfolding in your life and trusting that when something ends, it's creating space for what's next. Because eclipses can be cosmic course correctors. They align us with paths we might not have chosen, but that ultimately carry us where we need to go. And eclipses always come in pairs. Just 2 weeks after this lunar eclipse, there's also a solar eclipse coming. But don't get ahead of yourself worrying about where that's going to land just yet. First, we've got to ride this lunar eclipse wave. Feel the swell and the release, and let that energy clear some space. Then we will be ready for the new beginnings that a solar eclipse can bring. So this week and next, if you are feeling the swell of that wave, just know that you're not alone. We're all in it together. And once it crests and crashes, you'll feel the release, the clarity, and the space that opens up afterward. If you'd like to go a little deeper into eclipse energy, check out the Astro Bestie chat we just did on eclipses. I'll leave the link for you in the show notes. And remember, the best way to survive an eclipse is to do your moon. If you're not sure what that means for you and your chart, I'll leave a link in the show notes to the podcast I did last month on the Moon Sign Guide to Emotional Self-Care. And we've got a whole Astro Bestie chat talking through the moon sign survival. I'll link that one in the show notes too. And if you feel like you really want to explore how this eclipse energy is hitting your chart personally, you can always visit my website, www.astrologywithalisa.com, and book a reading with me. And just a little teaser, this Sunday, my Astro Besties and I are still talking about the moon, but in a totally different way. We're diving into the void of course moon. what it means, why it matters, and why it can throw off your day without you even realizing it. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on Sunday over on the Astrology with Elisa podcast YouTube channel. And then I'll be back here again next week. In the meantime, take care of yourself during this eclipse season. Do your moon. I promise it will help. Take care, and I'll see you next time.